Honkai Star Rail has been out for a couple of weeks now, being compared to the popular JRPG series Persona. But is this free-to-play title really worthy of being compared to a fan-favorite game franchise like Persona? Well, that's what we're here to discuss today. On the 26th of April, HoYoverse, the developers behind Genshin Impact, released their new free-to-play sci-fi JRPG game, Honkai Star Rail. And after playing for a while, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the game, and how much it took me back to the glorious days of playing Persona 5. Now you might be wondering, what actually makes this game feel like a Persona game? I'll answer that and hopefully all of your other questions as we explore why this might be the perfect game to keep you busy while you wait for that sweet Persona 6 reveal. Note, I'll only be showing early game footage in order to avoid spoilers for new players, as it is still quite a new title, so you can safely sit back, relax, and enjoy the commentary. Honkai Star Rail takes you on an interplanetary adventure throughout the universe, where you board a mysterious space train alongside your fellow passengers. The game has a huge emphasis on story, and I can already tell there's a crazy amount of lore to uncover for those interested. The game is also just aesthetically gorgeous, with its stylized art style, vibrant colors, and effects. On top of this, the soundtrack really adds to the overall game feel, and helps you feel truly immersed in the universe. One of the areas in which Honkai Star Rail features similarities to Persona is through the combat system. Firstly, there's the ambush mechanic, in which you can ambush enemy opponents by sneaking up on them and attacking them to initiate combat. If you're able to do so successfully, you will start the combat scenario with an advantage. However, if the enemy detects you before you're able to attack them, you instead become the one at a disadvantage. Once combat is initiated, your party of 4 is thrown into the combat scenario and forced to battle your way out. Now, controlling combat is pretty simple, as there's a limited pool of actions available to you. You'll only really have 2 options at a time, in addition to ultimate abilities. Instead, the fun and complexity in combat comes from utilizing your party's strengths and taking advantage of your opponent's weaknesses, rather than purely mechanical skill. Combat features a turn order list that shows who attacks when. Using these to plan your next attacks is critical. Enemies also have weaknesses, which are essentially elements that are crucial to consider if you want to win your combat scenarios. Combat in Honkai feels like the perfect example of easy to learn but hard to master, which is initially very simple mechanics, but an incredible amount of depth once you really get into it. You will quickly find that ability variety, ultimates, weaknesses, toughness breaks, shields, managing skill points, and much more will add to the simple concept of combat, making for some truly interesting combat scenarios, some of which are actually quite challenging. An interesting different aspect of Honkai's combat is that each character has their own ultimate ability that charges up over time. You're then able to activate your ultimate at any time, even when it's not your turn, assuming it's fully charged. This makes for some interesting decisions, as you're able to instead spend your turn setting up for an ultimate, knowing you can trigger it before your opponent gets a chance to attack, taking a risk for a high reward. The overall combat loop feels quite similar to Persona's combat, which is also all about strategically choosing your attacks and targets based on your opponent's weaknesses, while simultaneously focusing on keeping your party healed and protected, and feels just as fun with its incredibly vibrant and visually stunning animations. Both games have a clear aesthetic and style, although Persona's is definitely a bit more unique. Just don't go into the game expecting Persona-level combat, as it's not quite as in-depth. However, it's certainly a good option to help fill the void for a bit while we wait for Persona 6. Just like the Persona games, the game features a plethora of different characters, all with their own personality, style, and combat abilities. You're even able to receive text from in-game characters on your in-game phone, making your relationship to them feel much more personal, similar to the instant messaging system in Persona. The characters all feel unique in their own way and will likely grow on you as time goes on. They're also incredibly well designed and have very interesting and unique styles and aesthetics. Now, to stay relevant in combat in this game, you will need to level up multiple characters, as different battles require different strengths. Each character has a combat type, which is essentially their element, but has a little more depth to it as well. Additionally, there's character paths, which essentially come down to the primary strength of the character in combat. Some paths prioritize single target damage, while others focus on AoE damage or even debuffs. This means you will oftentimes find yourself switching out characters in your party to prioritize others for certain battles, which is why you'll likely prioritize progressing more characters than just your core party of 4. Now, in order to level up your characters, you either complete combat scenarios to gain experience toward your characters in your current party, or you can utilize leveling items just like in Genshin Impact, to level up outside of combat at any time. These items allow you to have a backup solution where if you hit a difficulty curve and you're struggling, you can level up your character using some of your leveling items, assuming you have those items available at the time. You'll also be able to equip your characters with light cones and relics, which you use to further enhance and strengthen your characters. Additionally, each character has traces, which is essentially a skill tree for your character. Now, with this being a free-to-play gacha game, there's always going to be justified concerns about difficulty spikes or being unable to progress without spending large amounts of money. In my personal experience, I have yet to hit one of those spikes, and I've seen free-to-play players doing well in the game. Free-to-play seems to be a very viable option for the HoYoverse games, and this one seems to be no exception. That being said, you will likely need to spend a lot more time as a free-to-play player in order to progress through the game versus a pay-to-win player. It's worth mentioning that the game is single-player and there are no PvP elements, which gives you less incentive to spend money and makes it easier to be a free-to-play player. HoYoverse is also very good at giving players the possibility to earn a bunch of level-up rewards, and new and stronger characters, even as free players, just by participating in their events that occur very regularly. If you're an active player and willing to keep an eye out for the upcoming events, chances are you'll be able to earn a lot of these rewards just by playing the game. Speaking of events, if there's one thing in particular we have to give major credit to HoYoverse for, it's the way they constantly keep their games updated with a plethora of events and activities. If Genshin was any sort of indication of what we can expect from Honkai Star Rail, we're in for an absolute treat. As the game just recently launched, we have yet to see any major events, but it's very likely we'll see them shortly. HoYoverse has a track record of being one of the game development studios that updates their online games the most, even compared to large MMOs like World of Warcraft. I strongly believe that we can expect a lot of replayability to come through events, new characters, and additional content added over time. This game is absolutely what's referred to as a games-as-a-service type of game, and for that reason it's safe to assume that we will see very frequent updates to keep you invested for the long run. There's even a roguelite mode of sorts called Simulated Universe, which essentially works as dungeons where you explore, fight enemies, choose upgrades, and receive rewards upon completion. These also add to the replayability of the game. Honkai Star Rail has so far been an incredibly enjoyable journey and is the perfect game to just sit down and relax with. The social elements with the other characters, the simple combat loops, and the gorgeous environments make this game an absolute joy to play. Additionally, there's the incredible soundtrack, which is really just the cherry on top of all this. All these elements combine to create an experience that truly feels like a love letter to Persona in many ways. Now, is it better than Persona? Absolutely not. However, it's also completely free to jump into if you want to give it a try. It features a lot of similarities to the Persona games that should hopefully cover you until we finally hear more about Persona 6. Even if this game isn't as good as a Persona game, it's still its own game and does a fantastic job at being just that. I recommend giving it a look if you're interested. Just keep in mind that this is a gacha game, so make sure you don't succumb to the Gamba gods. Thanks for watching, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.